we have begun. All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to today's basic Hebrew lesson on this 19th day of February 2023. So we are working our way through Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. And we've gotten down now to verse 5 here. And so, just as kind of a little bit of a refresher, let's take a look at the English verses here. So, again, humans have started to build the tower and the city there for the purpose of making a name for themselves and also for the purpose of preventing them from being scattered all over the faces of the earth. And so that demonstration, then, the fact that they are wanting to prevent themselves from being scattered all over the earth, is indicative of their rebellion against the Lord, especially the command with respect to the commandment that he had given to Noah and his sons following the flood, most especially that they would fill the earth and thus that they would disperse. And so thus they've built this tower and this city out of that rebellious heart. And now we have in verse 5, how is the Lord going to respond to this? So we have then, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So that's the passage there in English that we're looking at. And now let's go ahead and come back on down here to the Hebrew text where we were at verse 5. So first of all, we have here verse 5, Vayereth. So Vayereth, you can see right on the front of it that we do have that wow with the pathak followed by the Dagesh forte. And we know that that is going to be the wow consecutive, the form that the wow consecutive takes on an imperfect. And remember that the wow consecutive indicates that there is some sort of a sequential nature that occurs between the clauses. Whether that sequence is going to be in terms of time, temporal, or in terms of thought and thus logical. And in this case, it's going to be that temporal idea because this is, well, we'll talk a little bit about the significance here in just a moment. But the wow with the pathak followed by the Dagesh forte. So the Dagesh forte is going to go inside of the imperfect preformative. And remember that imperfect preformative helps us to get into the ballpark with respect to the subject of the imperfect verb that we're dealing with. There are 4 imperfect preformatives, one of which would be the aleph. The other one is the yod. Then we also have the tau as well. And then there is the nun. And the aleph is going to indicate that the subject is first common singular. The nun indicates that the subject of the verb is first common plural. The yod indicates that the subject of the verb is going to be third masculine, singular, or plural. And the tau indicates that the subject could be either second masculine, singular and plural, second feminine, singular and plural, or third feminine, singular and plural. In this particular instance, we have the yod here, so that would let me know that this is going to be either third masculine, singular, or plural. To tell the difference, I look at the end of the verb. If there is a U class vowel, that is, if I have either a shurik or, in some cases, a kibbutz, if that shurik has shortened, then I know that this is going to be plural. But in this particular instance, I don't have that U class vowel, so thus the subject is in fact going to be singular. And thus we know then that the subject is going to be he in this particular instance. Now, if I remove the wow, if I remove the yod, that leaves me then with the resh and the daleth. And that's going to be indicative of the root of the word. Now, here's the thing. Most Hebrew words are built off of 3 letters. But this one, once we remove the wow, once we remove the yod, that leaves me with only 2. So that lets me know that something has dropped off. There are a couple of possibilities. Either something has dropped off from the front of the triliteral root, or from the middle, or from the end. And if I take a look at the pointing of my imperfect performative, that lets me know that something has dropped off from the beginning. Let me go ahead and explain what I mean by that. So, we have talked in the past about how it is that you can tell the stem of the verb by looking at the pointing of the imperfect performative. When we're dealing with the cal stem, that is that basic stem, then the imperfect performative is basically going to be pointed with a hieroc. There are some exceptions to that. First common singular with the aleph, it's going to be pointed with a segol instead. That's in order to make the pronunciation of the aleph there a little bit easier. But so thus the cal, the imperfect performative, is typically going to be pointed with a hieroc. With the nifal, on the other hand, that imperfect performative is also going to be pointed with a hieroc. When we're dealing with a piel, that imperfect performative is going to be pointed with a vocal schwa, and same thing as well when we're dealing with the pual, which is the passive of the piel, that passive of the intensive action. When we're dealing with the hiphil, then the imperfect performative is going to be pointed with a pathak. If we're dealing with the hofal, which is going to be the passive of the hiphil, that passive of the causative action, we have 2 options. Either the imperfect performative is pointed with a kametz hatuf, or it could be pointed with a kibbutz in certain instances as well. And then when we come on down to the hithpa'el, then what I have is the imperfect performative followed by a tau, and the imperfect performative being pointed with that hieroc. So here, in this particular instance, our imperfect performative, this yod right there, is not pointed with any of these normal pointings. It is instead pointed with a seirei. And that lets me know that something has dropped off from the beginning because of the fact that the pointing has changed there at the beginning of the word. What has happened in this particular instance? I had the word yarav, and this is basically the verb to go down. So yarav. And then I put the imperfect performative on it, in this instance, the yod. And the imperfect performative, when we're dealing with the cal, would be pointed with that hieroc. And the normal pointing would be, in this instance, y-o, we'll say. All right, if we're dealing with the third masculine singular. Now, the interesting thing is, as we're taking a look at this, you'll notice that the second yod, that is going to be the yod of the triliteral root yarav, to go down, that yod is now closing the syllable here with the imperfect performative. And so what that means is that yod is now vowelless. So this schwa underneath the yod is silent. As a result, because of the fact that that yod is a consonant that's very, very close in pronunciation to a vowel, that schwa may as well not even be there. And so what happens then is because of the fact that the Hickory and the Hickory yod can join together in order to form that long I vowel, that is, these two are homogeneous with one another. What happens is the imperfect performative, the vowel underneath the imperfect performative is going to lengthen because of that. And Hickory's, when we're talking about a case like this, they don't lengthen to the hierarchy, they lengthen instead to the seire. And so thus, I'm going to get this particular form here. So thus I would have ye rov. But here's the interesting thing as well. Ye rov, well, it's easier to go from an E-class vowel to an E-class vowel than it is to go from an E-class vowel to an O-class vowel. That is, from the say right here to the holum there, as far as pronunciation is concerned. So as a result, then, under the influence of this E-class vowel there, this here underneath the resh, that vowel is also going to change to an E-class vowel, just to make it easier to pronounce. And so that's how we get to this form here, Yerith, which is the very form that we have in our text. And so this particular form is in fact going to be a cal imperfect third masculine singular from the verb yarav, which has the idea of to go down. And so thus I would translate it as he will go down, that imperfect capturing that idea of incomplete action and thus roughly equivalent to our present or future. But then as soon as I put the wow consecutive on it, that idea of the wow with the pathak followed by the dagesh forte, well, now that wow consecutive has the effect of flipping the aspect, making this verb that is imperfect in form perfect in meaning, thus completed action. And so thus I would translate it instead as he went down. And thus you can see my translation here. Then that's picking up the wow consecutive. He, that picks up the third masculine singular subject indicated by that yod imperfect performative, and then went down indicating the triliteral root, as well as the fact that the aspect has been flipped. So this then is my verb, and usually in Hebrew, the subject will follow the verb, and that is in fact what has happened in this particular instance. So here's my verb, he went down, and then my subject follows it, Yihya. So thus, we have then this entire clause, then Yihya went down. All right, what now? That in and of itself is an interesting concept because of the fact that you will have some individuals who will look at this and will say, oh, well, look at that. The creator is separated from his creation because he had to come down into the creation to see the city. Well, that's not what this is indicating here. Yihya, he is, of course, the transcendent creator, which means that the creation exists within him. In him, we move and live and have our being. And so, thus, the creation cannot be separated from him, nor can he be separated from the creation. So, in other words, Yihya did not need to come down as though he was separated from his creation and did not know what was going on within it. So that's not what this is saying, but rather this is indicating that the action of these humans had reached the point where now it was time for the evaluation of that action to occur. And so he's manifesting himself in a special way here. So thus, then Yahya went down, and then we have Lir'oth, Eth Ha'ir, Wa'eth HaMikdal. And so notice here, as I take a look at this, right off, yes, sir.
Just a quick note, an interesting thing about that, the fact that the Lord went down, in most violations of his design, he allows the system which he has already constructed to have its negative effects to turn man back to his way. Just like, and that was evident in the life of Adam, as we saw when we dealt with that. Adam knew that he had violated the person of God before God ever came and pronounced any judgment in that respect. But this would indicate to me that what was happening here, the importance of what was going on here, these humans were trying to totally thwart his design for them to disperse and fill the earth. And so in a sense, this was the sort of thing where it says, I will personally involve myself in bringing their actions to nothing. But he could have said, well, this is not a major deal, so to speak. So that's a dumb statement to start with. If it's contrary to his design, it's major. But he could have just let his system work. But he had a purpose in mind, and people needed to fill the earth as he had designed them to. So this is a case where he personally manifests himself. And I think probably even the verb yarad, and I know we say it means to go down like Jordan, Yarden, the going down river, but I wonder if there isn't a slightly different meaning to the word as well. But it'll take a little more research to see that and evaluation. So, but anyway, I just thought that I think you made a good point. That's significant that the Lord came down. And in this matter, he could have let the system do it, but he was not satisfied to let the system do it in this particular instance of man's violation. So,
Very good. Thank you, sir. And so then we have well, why is it that he came down? And so thus we have this word here, lir'oth. Now, right off the bat, one of the things that I notice here is that we have 4 consonants, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the lamed, the resh, the aleph, and the tau. And so that tells me then that something has been added to either the end of the word or to the front of the word. And I see right here on the front of it, I see that lamed. And we had talked previously about the fact that we do in fact have a lamed preposition. Hold on a moment, let me clear some of this off here. Don't need the information about the pointing of the for the moment. Okay, so talking just then about the fact that we had talked in the past about the fact that we do have this lamed preposition, this idea of 2 or 4, indicating reception. And then we also have the beth preposition, in or at, indicating location. And then there is the kaf preposition indicating comparison or manner as like. And so here, this lamed is in fact that lamed preposition. Now, one of the things that you will remember is that the lamed preposition is typically pointed with a vocal schwa. But in this instance, our preposition is pointed with the heric. And so the question emerges as to why that might be. And the answer to that comes in the very next letter, because you'll notice that the resh here is also pointed with a vocal schwa. And in Hebrew, we cannot have two vocal schwas side by side. So what happens then is the vocal schwa that is underneath the first letter, so the first vocal schwa, is going to lengthen to the nearest short vowel in pronunciation. For a simple vocal schwa, that nearest short vowel is going to be the heric. And that is why then we have the heric underneath the lamed. Then next we have the word, and this is our triliteral root. And you can notice that we have the resh, the aleph, and the tau here. But notice too as well the pointing, o. We had talked previously about this fact that there are these forms in Hebrew called the infinitive construct. Basically, an infinitive is going to be a verb that functions as a noun. And in this instance, this is going to be an infinitive, so a verbal noun, that is in the construct form. That is, it's being modified by another noun. And so what we have then, the pointing of the infinitive construct is typically going to be o, and that is exactly what we have here. You can see that simple vocal schwa, and you can also see that holum right there. So this then is an infinitive construct, and that just means it's a verbal noun being modified by another noun. And the triliteral root here would be resh, aleph, hey. So the verb ra'ah, which has the idea of to see, or in certain contexts as well, to provide. And you will notice we have a tau here instead of a hey. As you will remember when we were dealing with construct nouns, it is not at all uncommon for a noun in the construct that originally ends in a hey to change that hey to a tau when it goes to the construct. And that is what has happened in this particular instance. So this is in fact just the form that we have then for ra'ah when it goes to the infinitive construct. And then the lamed on the front of it is indicating the purpose or the reason that the Lord went down, or the reason that he manifested himself in that special way to deal with this particular issue. And so thus, lamed preposition, I would translate it as to. Ra'oth would be seeing of. And then we will see that the absolute noun, ha'ir, is definite, which also in turn makes this construct noun also definite. And this indicates, as we said, the purpose for the coming down. Then you'll notice here, eth, this is going to be the definite object marker eighth. The vowel has shortened here due to the fact that it has joined together with the word ha'ir, joined together by that makif there. And thus, we know from that definite object marker that this word here is going to be the object of the infinitive construct. It's the absolute, but it's also indicating what is receiving the action of the seeing. And so what is it that he's seeing then? Well, he's seeing ha'ir. And you will notice the word ear here, which is city. And then on the front of it, you have hey with a pathak, followed by a dagesh forte. But the dagesh forte would have gone inside of the guttural. The guttural, the ayin here in this instance, remember we have four gutturals, the aleph, the hey, the haith, the cheth, and the ayin. And those gutturals can't take the dagesh forte, so that ayin is going to reject it. And the pathak that was underneath the hay originally lengthens to the kamates, just like what we have here. And so thus we have the city. So then Yahya went down for the purpose of seeing the city. And then you will notice our next word here, Wa'eth HaMikdal. And so notice here, you can see the conjunction on the word eth, which again, that's that very same word that we saw up above here. So this then, whatever this is going to be compound conjoined back to ha'ir. So both of these together are going to be the object of the action of seeing, of that infinitive construct. It's telling us what it is that was seen. So thus we have the conjunction, I would translate it as and then we have HaMikdal. Notice again, hey with the pathak followed by a dagash forte. There's my article. And then I have Migdal, and that is that idea of tower. We had discussed last week about the fact that Migdal, this is actually a noun form of the verb gadal, which has the idea of to be great. But then once you put a noun in the front, a mem in the front of it, it becomes a noun. And so thus this would be the great thing. And you think about a tower, well, it's going to be the tallest of the buildings that have been built within that particular city. So it would thus be the great building, the tower thus. So thus we have then, Yahya went down for the purpose of seeing the city and the tower. And then what is the nature of this city and tower? That's where we get our next relative clause. Asher banu b'nei ha'avam. So Asher, this is going to be that relative pronoun. And what it does is this is going to give us more information about these things that the men are building. So they're building the city, they're building the tower. So this is just giving us more information about that. And then you will notice here that we have banu. This is going to be another verb here. It originally comes from the verb bana, which has the idea of to build. But then when I make it plural, so if we're dealing with a cow perfect, so basic completed action, third common plural, then what would have happened is I would have added a U-class vowel at the end here. But because of the fact that that hey is a rather weak sound, that hey drops off at the end. And so thus we are actually left with the form banu. And so that's what we have in this instance. So banu, thus built. And then, well, who built? Well, that's where the subject comes in, and the subject typically follows the verb in Hebrew. So thus we have b'nai. This comes from the word bain, which has the idea of son. But you will notice the Seireyod ending there. That Seireyod ending lets me know that this is going to be a masculine plural construct noun. That is, it's a noun which occurs in construct being modified by another noun, the noun that follows it. And so thus, if Bain is son, we make it plural as indicated by that Seireyod ending. So I make it sons, but then I make it construct, sons of. And then we come to the next word here, ha'adam. And you can very clearly see the word adam, human there, and then hey with the pathak followed by a dagash forte, except for the fact that the dagash forte would have gone inside of the aleph, which is one of our gutturals. It rejects the dagash forte, and thus the preceding vowel lengthens, and that's how we get that ha there. So the human. Now, remember as well that when we are dealing with construct nouns, construct nouns never take the article. And so they are made definite or indefinite by the noun that follows them. If the noun that follows them, if their absolute is definite, then that means that the construct noun is also definite as well. The absolute noun is going to be definite if it has the article, if it is a pronoun, or if it is a proper name. In this instance, our absolute noun has the article, which means that the absolute is therefore definite, which in turn makes the construct noun definite. And so thus we have the sons of the human. And so thus we have this particular idea then. So then Yahya went down to the seeing of the city and the tower which the sons of the human built. Right? And sir, do you want me to continue on for a little bit?
Sure, go ahead. You've only been about 30 minutes, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good.
That'll be fine.
All right, sounds good. So then we have verse 6 here. And so our next word is thus going to be Wayomer. And you can notice, again, right on the front of this, we have wow with the pathak followed by the Dagash forte. So another one of those wow consecutives indicating that this verb to which that wow consecutive is attached is joining back to the previous verb, in this case, back up to Wayereth, and it's indicating some sort of a sequence that exists between the two clauses. So, Wayomer, that's that wow consecutive. And then the Dagash forte is going to go inside of the imperfect performative, in this instance, inside of the Yod. And the Yod is going to be third masculine. No U class vowel at the end, so this is going to be third masculine singular. And you can also notice as well the triliteral root there, aleph mem resh, the word amer, which is the idea of to say. So then we have, then he said. Now, you will also notice as well, this imperfect performative is pointed with that holum there instead of one of those vowels that we were talking about earlier. The reason for that is because of the aleph there. That aleph is a weak letter. Our weak letters being the gutturals, the noon, the yod, and the wow. And so as a result, there's going to be some sort of a change in pointing when you have a vowel associated with that aleph. And that is what has occurred there. So Wayomer, then he said, well, who said? Yahya. So then Yahya said, so after having evaluated everything that's going on there, then Yahya said, and then we have Hain. And the grammars will indicate this to be an interjection. It's not really an interjection. Really, what we have here in this instance, it is an imperatival form, and it means behold. So it's drawing special attention to what is about to be said. So behold, and then we have am. And am, this is going to be the word for people. So am echad, and we had looked at about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the fact that echad is going to be a numeric adjective, masculine singular, indicating the word one. And so, thus, what we have here, people one. And there is, in fact, an understood verb of existence here. So we would say the people exist one. So he's pointing out the unity that is being exhibited by these people, especially by virtue of the fact, as you can see here, our next phrase, our next clause rather, Wisafa achath lekulam. So notice here, again, you have Wisafa, there is the wow conjunction on the noun safa, lip. So, and lip, achaf, one. So, same word here, echad and achaf, except achaf is the feminine form of it to go with the feminine noun, safa. And then you have likulam. You will notice that we have the lameth preposition there, indicating that idea of two or four. And then at the end here, we have the which is going to be our third masculine plural pronominal suffix, them. And right in the middle here, you have the word kol, that is that idea of entirety. But because of the fact that there is going to be that pronominal suffix at the end of it, this word kol is in the construct form, which means that vowel, that holum, has reduced here. So thus we would say to the entirety of them, with that entirety of picking up the idea of the construct. Now, another thing as well to notice, this here, likulam, that's a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases have a tendency to be adverbial, which means then that there must be a verb for this particular prepositional phrase to modify. But you will also notice with safa, that's not a verb, that's a noun. Achaf, that's not a verb either, that's a numeric adjective. So thus, just like up above, am echad, just like we had that understood verb of existence there, so too, we must also have an understood verb of existence here. So thus, as well, understood verb of existence. So, and one lip exists to the entirety of them. So they are united by virtue of the fact that they are able to speak the same language. And so because of the fact that they are united in this way, they are thus able to influence one another, and they're using that influence of their communication to influence one another to rebel against the Lord, just like what we saw up above, where they were saying, Hava, give to the building of this particular, of this tower, of this city. And so, thus, that influence of one another. And so, what is going to occur? So, thus, we have then, so, and one lip exists to them, so they're united in that respect. And then you have wuzeh hachalam. So, again, wuzeh here, you can very clearly see the wow conjunctive on the front of it on the demonstrative pronoun zeh. And that's going to be a near demonstrative this. So, and this, and then we come to this one here, ha-chalam. And this particular word, you can see the that we had right up there as well on likulam. That's that third masculine plural pronominal suffix again, that idea of them. And then you will also notice that I have a doubling of the lameth here. That's that dagesh forte. So the word here is the word halal, which in this instance has the idea of to begin. And then on the front of it, you can see the hey with the pathak, and that hey with the pathak here, it's not the article. It can't be the article because of the fact that this here, that ending indicates that this form is going to be in construct. So it's a construct noun, and constructs don't take the article. So that's not the article, but what this is actually the hey of the hifil. That is that causative action. So what we have in this instance then, this word, hachalam, is actually going to be a hifil infinitive construct again, and it also has the third masculine plural pronominal suffix, which makes the construct definite. So thus we would have the causing beginning of them, where the causing comes from the Hithial idea, beginning comes from the verb halal, and then the them comes from the third masculine plural. So the causing beginning of them. And then as well, we have next, la'asoth. And this as well, you can see that we have the lameth preposition there. It originally was pointed with a simple vocal schwa, but notice the letter that follows it. The ayin is pointed with a composite schwa, which is a vocal schwa for a guttural. And so, because of the fact then we would have a vocal schwa underneath the lameth, we would have a vocal schwa underneath the ayin. Well, you can't have two vocal schwas side by side in Hebrew. So the first one is going to lengthen to the nearest short vowel in pronunciation. And in the case of a hatef pathak, that composite schwa that we have underneath the ayin, the lameth is thus going to take that pathak there. And then we have here asoth, and you can very clearly see as well the verb asa, which has the idea of to do or to make, but you will also notice as well that in this particular instance, the form has taken that o pointing, except it would be that hatef pathak, that same pointing that we saw in the infinitive construct up above, and that's why the hey has changed to the tau here, because that is that infinitive construct. So thus we would say to, that's that lameth there, the doing of, understood it. So thus what we have here, and this understood verb of existence again, this exists, the causing beginning of them to the doing of it. So this is what they began to do.